Welcome back, you lot. I'm afraid this week seems to be boring week at Games Workshop HQ because we've got a new set of Space Marine Heroes. You know, those blind boxes you can buy, you're not sure what you're going to get in the box, but previously if you bought 8 of them in like the container that they come in, then you would get all 7 heroes. That's not a thing anymore. Throwing that out there right now, there is no guarantee of that anymore, which is a real shame. They did a similar thing, I think, with the Stormcast stuff that they did previously, which, again, not great. Good for them, because that means there is more likely that people will buy more boxes in order to obtain the full collection. But bad for everyone else, because that means you have to spend way more, or simply go to eBay and pay scalpers. Brilliant. So, this is the new Space Marine Heroes collection, and it's kind of dull. And it's kind of dull for a reason, which we will go over, but let's take a look at them, right? It's important to note that this is Strike Force Variel from the Dark Angels chapter. It's important to point that out because without, them being painted green, you wouldn't be able to tell that they were specifically Dark Angels, which is part of the complaint. It's also Kill Team as well, so you can use them in Kill Team. Grand, brilliant. These are the lads. One of them is being kept secret. I bet you can't guess what it is. It's a Phobos Marine, that's all it is. You can tell by the armour around the shins. I'm 99% sure that that's what it is. So this is the Dark Angels Kill Team / Strike Force, whatever. And notably, there is absolutely nothing specifically Dark Angels about them, apart from the colour scheme, which, of course, you can paint them however you want, which is part of why they are so plain. The fact is, these have a weird sort of positioning, I feel like, because on the one hand, they are themed around particular chapters. They get a bit of story, they get the stuff that, like, the things that you use them in, they are themed around a particular chapter, and so this time around it's Dark Angels, but at the same time, they need to be as mass appeal as possible. You don't want just Dark Angels players to pick them up, because that means that there's a good chunk of people who would, quite like Space Marines, don't want to pick them up because they're not a fan of Dark Angels. So what do? You have to make them as broad in appeal as possible. It's also the fact that these boxes aren't necessarily just aimed at collectors / enthusiasts. They also show up all over the place. It's not just getting them at like Games Workshop shops or third-party retailers. They show up in places that have really nothing to do with the hobby whatsoever. So they also have to have a wide-ranging appeal in terms of if someone is new to the hobby and picks one of these up, it can't be a super high-detailed, difficult-to-paint miniature. Which does make me wonder why they did the Death Guard one, because those were relatively complex. I mean, the entire Death Guard range is more complex than, say, just a box of intercessors or whatever. And this lot are definitely being played safe. This is a very, very safe box, and that is part of the problem, in a way. When we had the Firstborn Space Marine Heroes, those were pretty cool because they were a different scale. They felt updated and new and fresh. Also, nice variety of different poses. Same thing with the Terminators. Now, the Terminators were technically Blood Angels. They didn't have any of the chapter-specific iconography, but they were a different scale to the Terminators that we had access to at the time. They were also differently posed. They were actual improvements, I would suggest, in quite a few cases. In terms of the way they looked fresh, clean, new, crisp, lovely, and they were upscaled a fair bit. So there was something unique there. With the Death Guard ones, they were unique. They were different. These are not that. These are just standard Space Marines. There is nothing that particularly marks them out as being anything different to anything else, which when it comes to a, not necessarily limited release thing, but to a special collectible approach, just kind of makes me go, fine. They're not sparking that thing of, oh, these look unique. These would be a cool thing to have. There may be some of you, as collectors, who still think they're a cool thing to have. That's totally fine. But for me personally, even if Space Marines were my absolute favourite, I would not be rushing out to grab, a bunch of these in the hope of getting all of them because they just don't look like anything new, different, or special. They do specifically point out, like, they're a great introduction to the Warhammer hobby and you can assemble them without glue or tools. That's fine, don't have a problem with that, but realistically there is nothing really about them that is special or unique or different. You know, they can't be covered in Dark Angels iconography because that means that people wouldn't be able to paint them as other chapters, and they want to leave that door open. They also don't want to make them massively complex, because if you are brand new to the hobby and you do get into it by picking these up, you don't want something that's absolutely rammed with small detail, so they can't be particularly complicated because of that. Which just means that what you've got is a perfectly serviceable range of 7 Space Marines that look just like any of the other Primaris Space Marines that you can currently buy. Which, on the one hand, sets expectations, I guess, but on the other hand, when it comes to releasing a themed thing, where it is specifically called out as a certain chapter, whilst they did do a similar thing with the Blood Angels release, however many years ago that was, there was at least something different, something new about those miniatures, whereas this is really just a generic team that's been given a bit of Dark Angels background, and they've been given the colour scheme for the Dark Angels, and there is nothing else notable going on. As I say, they're fine. I can't criticise them in terms of, you know, do they look like decent Space Marine sculpts? They do. They look fine. They look just like all the others. And the others are also perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. But if you were going into this and you're like, oh man, I love Dark Angels, I can't wait to get some of this like new Dark Angels stuff, this is going to be great, you're not really getting that. And again, I totally understand why you're not getting that. It just feels like a little bit of a shame when it comes to Dark Angels, you have things like Azrael, who looks absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of like cloth and robes going on that marks them out as being something a little bit different. And that does cut down on the mass appeal. That does make it so they're less likely to be picked up by people who just like Space Marines. But at the same time, it also means that a lot of the personality that you get in these models right here, a lot of the personality that make the Dark Angels so interesting, is simply lacking in a very big way for something that is treated as being a Dark Angels release. Something that I'm kind of struggling to reconcile a little bit here is this kind of emphasis on kill team, right? So collect them all and you have a simple to learn, streamlined kill team designed as the perfect way to get a taste for the game. That's fine. That's actually quite a cool idea. Except these are miniatures that you don't know what you're going to get when you buy them, and Games Workshop has taken away the option for guaranteeing that you're able to pick them all up in one go. So it's the perfect way to get into Kill Team, if you're able to actually collect them all first. Can you see where the disconnect is there? Like, I don't think it's just me, it might just be me, and that's totally fine if it is. And to be honest, I can't even remember if this is something they've done for the previous Warhammer Heroes boxes. It could well be that it is, in which case I'm late to the debate on this one. But saying this is a great and easy way to get into Kill Team, whilst there is a prerequisite of having to acquire them all in the first place, when part of the very design of these Warhammer Heroes collections is that they are more difficult to obtain than simply buying a box full of 7 dudes, there's like a weird dissonance there that I'm not quite on board with, and that's especially not helped by the fact that if we scroll down, they do say right here every display unit will have 8 blind boxes, but there is no guarantee you will get all 7 miniatures if you buy a full dispenser of 8 boxes. You know, I just feel like saying that whilst also saying that it's a streamlined kill team designed as the perfect way to get a taste for the game. If it was supposed to be a streamlined and perfect way to get a taste for the game, you would make it so that it was possible to get all 7 models needed to have that taste of the game, not make it harder to get all 7 by making it so that you are not guaranteed them if you buy a full dispenser of them. The two concepts not quite aligned in my eyes. Anyway, that is them. That is the new Dark Angel Space Marines Heroes collection, box, kill team, maybe, if you can find them all. They're perfectly fine Space Marines. They're just not very interesting. And I feel like there's a flawed concept with trying to make them a perfect introduction for something whilst making it harder to get all of them in the first place. But that's just me. That is just me. Let me know what you think of that a lot in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you for the next one.